Hello and welcome to the IBF Education Podcast, where I'll be talking to non-native English language learners about their experiences learning English and about why they chose to learn the English language in the first place. Today we'll be speaking with Emiliano. How are you doing today, Emiliano? Are you okay?
Hi, Jacob. Yes, very well. I'm pleased to be part of this podcast with you.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear it. How is your morning going? Are you having a good morning?
Really well, really well. I started my morning drinking mate. It's
The
my
typical drink
breakfast.
of Argentina, that for
Yes,
those who don't know.
yes, it's my breakfast every day.
Perfect. So, where are you from, Emiliano? Where are you
Well,
currently
I
living?
well I'm from Rio Cuarto. It's a city of Córdoba province. It's near 650 kilometers from Buenos Aires.
Wow, far away.
Yes, far away. 7 hours of traveling in car.
Yeah, that sounds like a long journey.
Yeah, yeah.
And for people who don't know about much about where you live, could you give us some kind of details about the area? What are some
Uh,
kind of normal landmarks to see and those kind of things?
yeah. Well, the city is a big city. Um, it's a like a town. All my family is living there. Sorry, and I spent almost my life there, and then I moved to Buenos Aires in 2014.
And do you like living in Buenos Aires?
Yes, yes, so much. It's a great place to live. It's a city with big opportunities to find to job and to food to eat in different restaurants and cultural, of course.
It is a very cultural city, definitely.
Yes, yes,
Find a huge diversity of things here.
yes, yes, yes.
What was the most shocking thing for you about moving from Cordoba to here?
Well, when I moved to Buenos Aires, the culture, the cast, yes, the habits in the daily is different to in the inner of the country because the people in the inner of the country is more uh, conservative in the I don't know what is the word, but here in the big city is more free uh, in the way the wear the cloth, uh, the 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 haircuts, uh, the music. Here in the people in the street uh, walking sing, but it's very rare to see anywhere doing this in Rio Cuarto, for example. And the other question is the freedom in the relationship. Yes, so it's very different. The food there is some different, and the name of the food is some different too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, obviously Argentina's great for so many different cuisines. What is a typical food from your hometown that maybe is not as good in Buenos Aires?
Well, as you know, in Argentina, the typical um, food is asado, but there is a small difference in the meat or the cut of meat that you are in the asado. For example, here in Buenos Aires, the people eat so much a cut of meat called entraña that
Hmm.
in Rio Cuarto is not common. Um, the other example is bondiola. It's a cut. It's correct to say cut of meat.
Yeah, that's right. In that case, it's a cut of pork, isn't it? The
Yes,
bondiola.
yes, the pork. So in Rio Cuarto is no common. Besides, here in Buenos Aires is a city that have many, no, it's a city uh, with many um, pizzerias that
Yeah.
local for pizza. Um, Here in Buenos Aires, the pizza is eaten with paina. It's a typical product made with I don't know in English what is the name, but it's garbanzo.
Oh, I didn't know
It's
that's what fino are made of. It is what is the word? I can't think of the word in English off the top of my head right now. Soybeans, I think.
soybean, yes,
Soybeans?
probably. It's a vegetable.
No, sorry, chickpeas is garbanzos. Chickpeas is what we call those things.
So in Rio Cuarto, this typical food is not common there. It's not common there.
Very cool. And for those who
It's
don't know what an asado is, that's quite an important point of discussion. I think it's quite important to explain this concept. And an asado is kilos, literally kilos of meat that's put on a grill that's fired by either coal or wood. It's very different to a barbecue. Barbecues generally are quite quick, and
mhm.
that barbecues are generally burgers and sausages. Um, but here in Argentina, if somebody says a barbecue, they mean asado. That's going to be a huge slab of kilos of
Huge.
meat,
Yes.
absolutely ginormous, and it will take 2 to 3 hours to cook. It's a long process.
Yes. Beside the asado is Argentina is a country with very European culture uh,
Yeah.
mix. Um, the asado is cultural. It's more than a simple food or with people. Yes,
Yep.
you have a no routine, if not I don't know, like ceremony. Yes, that this
Yeah.
starts with
Perfect.
the fire. It's very good. Normally you eat asado on Sundays, but it's not the rule.
Yeah. I mean, generally Sundays is a good day to have an asado, the day
Yes,
of rest and all that.
of course. Yes, of course.
You can't do anything after eating asado. Just go to sleep.
Yes, yes. After
So,
asado, you take a nap.
yes, of course. Yeah, really, really important to do that.
Yes.
So, what is your job, Emiliano? What do you do for a living?
Well, as I told you earlier, I moved to Buenos Aires in 2014. In this opportunity, I moved to start my PhD in prostate cancer. But uh, right now, currently, I working for pharmaceutical company, and in my role is called clinical research associate. The normal task is monitor different tasks in the trials, clinical trials.
That sounds very complicated.
It's complicated. Yes, it's complicated.
That's a great job, though. So, what made you decide to pursue that line of work?
Well, the job is interesting. It's very interesting. So you have the opportunity to watch the step before um, the medicines get out to the public. And
Mhm.
in the basic research, like my PhD, you generate knowledge, yes, and then exist the applied research, where the applied research you use the knowledge generating basic research to resolve a problem. for example, and disease. Then came the clinical research, is when this solution is uh, proved or tried in human being. So
Wow.
the way is very interesting, and it's very slowly. It's a slowly pathway.
Yeah, it sounds really, really slow. It sounds like
Hmm.
there's a lot of thought and preparations to get to that point of human trials.
Yes. Yeah. Just in the clinical trials, the time that spent until the medicine is free to the market spend nearly 5 to 10 years.
Wow. So for actually to be distributed around the world as a
Yeah.
product, five
Yes.
to 10 years, that's
But
incredible.
the most interesting of the clinical research is that when you have the approved for the medicine, and the medicine is start to um, sell
Yeah.
to sell the public, the investigation to continue, because you need to ensure that no cause um, adverse events. So the monitoring is still continue.
That's amazing. Okay, so even after it's been released, you have to monitor for a long time.
Yes, yes,
See, that's a good thing to do just to ensure there's no issues, right?
yeah, yes. The responsibility is very high.
Yeah, we don't need anybody growing an extra pair of limbs. No more arms and legs and fingers.
Sorry, sorry.
You don't need people to be growing arms and legs additional to
Uh-huh.
what they have.
Yeah,
Important to keep monitoring those
yeah,
things.
yes. Exist case with medicines that get out to the market very soon, and the others haven't in the people were very drastic.
Yeah, I've heard of some cases. I mean, I mean, the purpose of your job, right? So to ensure that things are done properly and that risks are minimalized as much as possible.
Hmm. Yes, it's correct. It's correct.
So how often do you speak English in your job? Do you have much opportunity to talk in English?
Well, to speak, no, it's not often,
Hmm.
but I'm in contact with English every day, because I'm read and write and listening videos for trainings. But to speak is not common, because just in I work here. I work here in Argentina, but sometimes we have meetings with people in abroad. Um, for example, with LATAM, the countries of Latin America, but how Brazil is the only country no Spanish parlant, is correct, Spanish parlant. The meeting is in English, so it's the only opportunity.
Oh, fair. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So instead of communicating entirely in Spanish,
Oh yes,
since Brazilians speak Portuguese, you want to
yeah,
have some kind of more common language in between.
yeah, it's correct. But I would like to speak more frequently, but it's not possible.
For sure. Well, if you ever decide to move to another company, I mean, maybe that's something you could look for.
Yeah,
More contact to English.
yeah, yeah.
And so would you say that English has been useful in your line of work?
Oh, uh, the English, the knowledge for English was incredible, very important for me in my job. Since my degree course was relevant. Yes, very relevant.
Well, I imagine because well, there's more scientific literature written in English than any other language
Yeah, yeah,
combined. Probably, actually,
yeah.
it's
Of
going to be
course,
up there.
I have to confess that my first contact with English was not so beautiful. Actually, I hated it really. But well, in Argentina, the education is divided in public or private education, and the contact it depends what kind of education you receive. If you receive a private education, probably in the elementary level, you in touch with the English. But if you receive public education, you start to know the English in the high school. It's, it is was my case. Normally, it's not good level, so was worrying for me. Then in the university, is I realized that I'm we're going to need to learn English because, like you said after, earlier, the magazines is right in English. The meeting is in English. That you need the English. The books are in English.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, well, especially English-speaking people, they find it hard to sympathize with that because it's English is a very dominating language over many fields, and I mean, especially if anyone's watching and you're at an English-speaking university in America or England or any other country, you don't appreciate how good you've got it. Emiliano couldn't find a lot of the resources that he needed in Spanish, so he had to literally learn another language to get
Hmm.
access to those resources. And that's one of the beautiful things about English, actually,
Yeah.
is that it does give you access to a huge amount of information that you wouldn't normally have access to.
Hmm. Yes, I agree. I agree. So here in Argentina, not every people is realize about it. So here, the Argentina said the English is the key that open all the doors. So it's very important.
And it is very true. I mean, it's quite funny when I look through the job pages in Argentina. You always see on the requirements, on the specifications, need a good level of English
Yes,
for
yes,
for everything. Even if you don't even have to speak or communicate in English, you need English.
yes. I don't know how you say in English the curriculum vitae.
Yeah, you can just shorten it to CV.
CVP. Okay. Here, when you apply to an open job in Argentina, normally you send the CV in English.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yes. The interview, one part of the job interview are in English
Now
always.
that's incredible because that's not what you'd consider in a Spanish-speaking country. But there you have it, folks. English is very important in this
It's
country,
it's
especially.
yeah, but it's for me particularly it's important no just for work, if not by interest, the communication with the people in the work.
So, how long have you been studying English for in total, do you think?
No much because I said earlier my first contact with was in the high school, but
Mhm.
I was not interested in English, so I can to say that I didn't learn in this moment, in that moment. Then start to learn translating magazine research word to word. Uh, you can imagine the time that take to read an article. Uh, there I learned so much. Then when I moved to Buenos Aires, I take one course. In that moment, the teacher give me a test to evaluate my level. So my level in writing was not very well, but I could listen in, I could read, I could understand, but was not able to speak. So for this reason, the teacher um, said me, you need to start the beginning, so level one. But the people in this level uh, know have the minimal knowledge in English.
Hmm.
So the content again was very boring for me.
Yeah.
So I don't recall the exactly date, but I think in 2016, 2017, I met a guy from Czech Republic that was looking for any partner to improve uh, his Spanish. So I need to I was need to improve my English. So um, in that moment we go into the bar, drink beer, and talk in English, and I realized that the interesting and the very beautiful idiom language. Sorry, uh, and I realized that I learned more than in a typical course.
For sure. I completely agree with that. This is kind of one of the so the language courses, the way that I see them, they're great for children to build up over the years because generally they'll learn things that equate to what they're learning in their first language, almost literally word for word. And getting that association in both languages at a young age is really important. It doesn't work for adults though, because like you said, you're going to feel bored. Okay, you're going to know certain things and pick things up from conversations with people or from watching something and acquiring some language. So you can't learn speaking in such a structured way as an adult. There's elements that probably you can. I'd say, for
Mhm.
example, learning to greet people and those kind of things. I mean, it's very, very important to learn to do that in any language. But maybe for contents specific to your work or to your interests, that for speaking anyway, that's got to happen as dynamically as possible. Um, One of the disadvantages of going through a pretty standardized English course as an adult learner is everything is really still based on what children are going to do. Like if you look through, say, the Cambridge syllabuses, for example, they'll talk a lot about individual subjects you'll learn in school, like, I don't know, biology or history or all these things. I mean, maybe you have interest in these things, maybe you don't. A lot of people maybe don't have interest in those things, and then they're not going to acquire anything. The most important thing when trying to acquire language is that you take an interest in what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. So
there's nothing more important than that.
yeah. For example, my native language is Spanish, but if you ask me for any rules in grammar of Spanish, I I I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can to speak fluency. I can discuss ideas and I can communicate clearly my ideas of point of view. So this
Yeah.
is the point.
Yeah, it's a valid point. You do not need to know the grammar rules in a
Yeah.
language to learn it. Now, what for speaking anyway, speaking is very intrinsic and there's so many different ways that you can speak also that's going to affect the grammatical structures of things. Um, Writing is where grammar is important.
Hmm.
If you, especially in the English language, everything is structured in such a
Yeah.
perfect way, if you like, actually, that you need to know, where to place commas and what's the correct punctuation to use in certain situations. How can I divide my content and order it so that it makes chronological sense?
Yeah.
Um, And then speaking, you don't have to worry about those things. It's like people forget the process of speaking. Like I challenge anybody to think about a topic you've never talked about before in your life. It could be absolutely anything. Then go and try and have a conversation about that topic with somebody else.
Okay.
You won't be able to say much because one, maybe you have an idea to go around the ideas in terms of vocabulary, but you haven't really formed your ideas because the repetition of those conversations are what build your ideas and build connection to the words you use to express those ideas.
Yeah.
So you'll start off very, very low level and not being able to completely explain what you want to say. I always use the analogy of a holiday, right? If you were, and this kind of an emotional response as well. If you were to return from a holiday and you spoke to 7 different friends over 7 days, the first day of you explaining how your holiday was is probably going to be an absolute disaster. You won't have any structure or order to your holiday because you're still kind of emotionally attached to it. And how do I control this and lay out what I want to say? So you'd be like, on the Wednesday I did this, and on the Monday I did this, and on the Sunday I did this, and there's no order to it, and you won't find the words to explain what you want to say. But as you go through the week and you speak to more and more friends, you will start to kind of on a subconscious level, analyze, and your brain will make it easier for you to say what you want to say and interpret the right words and the right expressions to simulate what you want to say in that situation. So that's something really important to remember. Not enough people take into account how important repetition is. And
Mm.
repetition is not repeating one word. That's not what repetition is.
Yeah.
Repetition is repeating of the idea until you've concreted that idea in your subconscious so that it can be effectively used at any time when you're talking about that topic. And if you don't exercise that, you can lose that explanation. Your brain will discard it if it's not useful anymore. So it always comes back to the importance of relevance. Relevance is by far the most important thing when you learn a language. For example, in when I speak Spanish, I think I can't speak about many of my hobbies in Spanish probably, but I can speak a lot about politics, corruption, um, what else? Inflation, things that I probably never
Yeah.
talk about in English, right? But I can speak about those things very well in Spanish. I can't speak
Yeah.
about how I am though.
Yeah. 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 I agree. And my advice for any uh, English learner is you talk about that you interest. For example, when you talk about your hobbies or uh, I don't know. I like the history. I really like uh, talking about history, and when you show interest in a topic, your communication is uh, more fluency because you want to communicate your ideas. Uh, when when you are boring or the topic is not interesting to you, it's, you don't interest to communicate anything.
Completely true. It's the I think it goes along with relevancy though of in equal importance actually is that you must be interested in what you say. You
Yeah,
must be interested in the subject under discussion because if you're not, you will learn nothing from
yeah,
it. No vocabulary, no ideas, absolutely nothing. It's a complete waste of your time. So it's a big piece of advice that I like to give people all the time is only focus on the things that you want to talk about. I think you, kind of the next question was about your English goals, but you said at the beginning that one of your goals was fluency, right?
yeah.
Well, let me ask you that. What does fluency look like for you in the English language?
Well, I think that the fluency is when you stop to translate in your mind every word that you want to say. And I think that in several scenarios I can be more fluency and yeah the variation is dependent of the day, but I I think that my fluency is not real fluency. I I I have to translate some words. My main difficult is with the collocation sometimes.
Yeah.
What word is correct and in the context. Um, Sometimes the verbal times some sometimes is difficult for me, but I think that this will be solid with more practice. So the my, my my decision to take this class with you is for two reasons. Obviously, my interest to gain fluency, but when you talk with native speaker, you are um, obligated. Is the word obligated
Yeah.
to speak entirely in English. And besides, you at the same time you are listening the native speaker. And I try with an Argentinian teacher, but it's not the same results. Besides, I I I think that I said before this, but I really like the British accent. And the second or the third objective is to sound similar. No like a British, but similar.
For sure. So there's a really interesting goals to have. So I think you've got a I think there's a kind of a misunderstanding in fluency, especially through all the advertisement that gets bombarded with the English language. Because if you look at any advertisements for any service that offers English courses, their main thing is be fluent in this amount of time. Well, they've missed the idea of fluency completely in that sense. It's literally impossible to be fluent in a language in a definitive period of time because
Mm.
it's not
Okay.
about it's because you have to explain your ideas in that language, and your interests today are going to be different to your interests in the future, more than likely. So that means you're going to have to adapt your language to suit other interests. So really the idea of fluency for me is the idea to be able to continually um, change the area of discussion to what suits you in that moment and feel comfortable expressing what you want to express.
Okay.
That takes a matter of time. You can become fairly fluent in speaking about particular things if that's where your focus of attention is. So, say you wanted to talk about football and you've never talked about football before. Well, if you spend a couple of months just focusing on football and only talking about football, you'll speak very fluently about it.
Yeah.
Will you be able to speak about your life fluently though? Probably not, no, because you've spent most of your life. I mean, Spanish is a great example as your native language. How long has it took you to learn Spanish? Your whole life.
Okay.
It's not stopped here. Every day you find new bits of vocabulary. Every day there's a new slang that appears. And
Okay.
to reach overall fluency, that is a lifelong goal. But you can be fluent in specific topics and not so fluent in other areas. And I think that's very natural for any speaker of a language. It's very, I challenge you to find one person in the world that can speak fluently about every single thing. It's about your interests and what's the most relevant things to you in your life. That's really important to remember that in your goal. Um,
Okay.
that should be your sole focus is make sure you're fluent in the things you enjoy at this moment. If you don't enjoy them, don't focus any attention. Maybe in the future you'll enjoy them more, and that'll give you the relevance you need. But now focus on the things that are most important for you. And accents is another interesting one. Um, you can acquire accents. I would say the goal for most speakers is to acquire a generalized accent, whether that's British or American or Canadian or Australian. You want to target generalized accents. There's a lot of people that I've met in Argentina who try to imitate or they want to learn what's called received pronunciation, RP English. Um, and I think that they're taught that this is the correct way to speak or something along those lines. But if you look at the breakdown of accents in England, I mean, there's over 300 different types of accents just in London, let alone
Yeah, yeah.
all over England. RP only equates to 2% of English people's pronunciation. It's really associated with it's basically dead. It won't be here when that generation dies out. It's generally associated with the probably the greatest generation, those from World War II in particular. So that accent's completely dying out. It's much better to get a standardized accent because it sounds more normal. One of the accents have different meanings, as they do in any language, right? So if you were to speak in received pronunciation in England, people will assume that you're of a very high class because the only people who would still acquire those things are the top 1%. That's it. So if you go to an exclusive club, for example, yacht club,
Okay.
bar, anything like that, you will find people that will use received pronunciation because that is their environment.
Mm.
But if I was to use that accent in my community, people would look at me very strangely. Why are you pretending to be someone that you're not?
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's really, really important to know this. It's like
Uh,
if I went to the southeast of London and I started to speak in the Cockney accent, people would
uh,
look at me really strangely because I'm not from there and I
okay.
won't sound right. Same if I went to Manchester. If I started so the Mancunian and Liverpudlian accent are quite interesting because they intonate at the end of their sentences. You know, how's it going, mate? Like this, right? And
It's nice
if
to
I
hear.
started, yeah,
Nice
it's
to
interesting.
know that.
Yeah, it's a really different kind of accent. Because in the south where I'm from, we generally intonate lower on the end of most sentences. But in the north, they always intonate on a higher pitch towards the end. And if I went, if I was in the South speaking like that, that could cause some problems for me. If I went to the North, that could also cause some problems for me because I'm not from there. That's not your natural accent. People should find the standardized accent as opposed to regional specific accents. And if you want to learn more about accents, just consume content in general because you will find a standardized accent
Yeah.
in there. Also, what I've realized this year, I've had some students who've been studying with me since I started living in Argentina, so for 4 years now. And some of them have, over the last 4 years, I listen sometimes, I think that sounds exactly like me. They've just acquired a pronunciation just from the exposure over time. You can train accents for sure. So there are accent coaches in the world, but it's very intense. They don't focus on every single word. They focus on key words that have key distinctions. So if I was
Yeah.
to give this example in Spanish, to give you an easy example to follow, if you take the standardized I pronoun in Spanish from Spain, yo, but
Mm.
here in the River Plate district of Argentina, sho.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
Y on the double L's are placed with this kind of SH sound. And that's something regional, dialectical that you can focus on, that small difference. Same if I was to say, to give an example in English now, where I come from, we say water with a strong T. But
It's the best accent.
yeah, well, it's a claritative accent for that
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
But if you go to other parts of England, they'll say water, water, or water. If you go to the north, they just glottalize the T. They just remove the T sound completely. So you can acquire those things, um, but only if you're exposed to it regularly. And I think
Yeah.
natural exposure is probably better than forced exposure.
Yeah. Yeah. When I said that I really liked sound similar, I referred to this because the difference in some words between American English that British English.
Yeah.
Water and water is the clear example. Um, the other, I I watch frequently documentaries in BBC. Yeah,
Hmm.
the last documentary that I watched was about British castle. Yes, so
Yeah.
makes the history, the medieval age, and the native British accent. So I put my all my attention in this word.
For sure. And it's really important to not just listen, but to copy.
Yeah, copy.
Your ears will take a long time to adapt to the changes of sounds because it will always register your native language first, so the Spanish sound database, before it registers English. It takes a long time for that transition to happen. So copying with the mouth and
Yeah,
practicing the articulation is really, really important. It will help you register those sounds or audioly. So
yeah.
that's really important.
I made this when read aloud. I read aloud. I try to copy the sound.
Yeah.
The one of the sound that I really like is is in the word where the R is silent. You
Yes.
are. In American is you are.
Yeah, there's a difference phonetically there, right? So there's a group of vowel sounds called rolling R vowels, and what we really do is, especially in British English, is that we don't pronounce things letter for letter, as you know. Everything is in some kind of phonetic sound. So in this case, with R, I there's not three sounds there. There's one sound, R, not
Ah,
R, and right? It's R.
ah,
In America, they kind of push their lips out a bit more to get a stronger sound on the end. So they get R,
R. Yeah,
the pirate R, as I call it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
I do like it. I do
Yeah.
like.
It's a bit harsh on the ears for me too sometimes. Um, but it's that's a really, really important difference to note, especially for Spanish speakers, because you pronounce things in Spanish letter by letter, literally, in most cases. Whereas English is not like that. It's you write it one way and pronounce it another. It's one of the horrible things about English, actually.
Yeah.
But that is all we've got time for today. So thank you very much for joining me on this podcast episode, Emiliano. It's been a pleasure talking to you about these things.
Thank you to you. It was a very pleasure for me.
And to the audience, thank you for watching. I look forward to you tuning in next time. Have a great day.